there, and welcome to another Studio WGS video. Now, a few months ago, Wargames released their Epic Waterloo game and introduced a whole new scale to wargame with. Now, I managed to get the British Cavalry Sprue, and that sprue was made into a video showcase. The link of that video is in the description. I also did a comparison video of the cavalry figures. That link is also in the description. Now, in today's video, we will be comparing the Wargames Infantry Sprue with a few other tabletop miniature scales, just to show where the figure places itself. I got this sprue from Wargames Illustrated for 10. I was secretly hoping that I would get the British Infantry sprue with my Wargames Illustrated, but I got the French Infantry sprue instead. Now, this was actually quite an opportunity to finally paint some Napoleonic French Infantry, as well, I previously had not had a chance to do this. Oh, I must add here that Wargames is in no way sponsoring this video, and these are just my thoughts. I looked around the store and found 5 other manufacturers to compare the Epic Napoleonic figures to. Unfortunately, these are all British figures, so I hope this would still help to illustrate the comparison, even though it's not the same army. So let's have a look at the infantry sprue in comparison to a few other Napoleonic figures from different scales. The first is Baccus 6mm British Napoleonic minis. The second are a base of Minifigs 15mm Napoleonics. These figures are from the mid-90s, so they are a little bit more simple in terms of sculpts. Then I have this base of tabletop games miniatures, or TTG. These figures are a bit more bulky and chunky. I also have a base of Old Glory miniatures. Finally, I have some AB figures, just to show what 18mm looks like. Now, it's interesting to note that 3 of these figures have their own scale for their own range. Baccus are known for their 6mm, AB is known for the 18mm, and now Wargames will be known for its 13.5 or 13mm. The difference between 15mm and 13mm is not that very far if you have a look. In terms of price, Warlord's 13.5 plastic may actually be the cheaper option. Now, in terms of painting, for the average painter who is, painting challenged and have a certain vintage, painting anything below 28mm will be a slight struggle and also tremendously frustrating. This French infantry sprue was such a struggle for me to get done. It was so difficult that I decided to standardize the colors. Now, as a miniature painter, I had to decide on how much detail I wanted to put on the miniature and balance it out with how many miniatures I have to repeat this detail on. So the smaller the figures are, the lesser detail I'm committed to do. And 13mm seems to fall in that very strange, I'm not so sure. So I think I'll have to paint a few more sprues to decide on how far I want to go in terms of detail. Now, a good reason to choose a smaller scale is also, well, for the ease of storage. The smaller scale has, it needs lesser space, obviously. There's also a sense of spectacle and scope if you play with smaller figures. Now, here's a 6" by 4" square, and you can see how much space each comparative army takes. All of these figures are, I tried my best to quantify them in almost the same numbers in terms of bases. Now, the fact that Wargames' Epic Waterloo comes in colored plastic is actually a blessing to the gamer. These figures are one of the few times when you can be playing with your miniatures moments after receiving them in the mail or getting them from the local game shop. It's interesting because they're all color coded. The British come in red plastic, the French come in blue. I just received this Sprue of Prussians, and they come in black. And I suspect that the Austrians may be in white. Now, the color coding makes getting the miniatures onto the table to game much faster, as you can already identify the different armies by color. Now, the plastic figures are quite light, so they feel a little less substantial when you move them across the table to play, as compared to the more weighty metal figures. The slaughter bases are very reminiscent of when metal miniatures started molding slaughters for their miniatures, because previously most miniatures came flat bases. Warlord Games' slaughter bases are quite good in this respect, and also it's interesting to note that both the infantry and cavalry bases not only share the same dimensions, but also share the same slaughters. The frontage of the basing may cause some discomfort for those like me who follow certain rule sets. Warlord Games have decided to use this basing system for their wargame. Now, I've seen a few videos where they actually cut the bases into two to accommodate rule sets of their own, which basically means instead of having 10 to a base, they now have 5 each. Now let me show you what the figures look like painted on a table. This is a very small sample of what this game potentially can be in terms of base count. This is basically the best I could do with the little time that I had. Now very quickly, I got my British Cavalry Sprue from Wargames Illustrated 408, and I got my French Infantry Sprue from Wargames Illustrated 410. I'm actually quite happy how these figures turned out, and slowly learning to paint the 13mm figures with some degree of speed and at a particular standard. I hope with the next sprue that I get, I'll probably get better in terms of quality. Now, having seen both the cavalry and infantry sprues, and after giving them a coat of paint, I can pretty much say they're not bad. There are different manufacturers like AB that are making remarkable figures, but in terms of Napoleonic plastic, these are pretty satisfactory. I hope this video is helpful for you to decide if you want to jump into Epic Waterloo from Warlord Games. Now, I hope you liked the video. Now, have you painted any of these figures? What's your opinion on the figures? What's your opinion on the scale? Do let me know in the comments. Also, leave a like and a subscribe to encourage the channel. And don't forget to enjoy painting those figures.